Welcome back to my channel, Navigating Midlife Live. Menopause symptoms, everyday products, disrupting your hormones. Is that possible? Is that true? Potentially. I think it depends. And, there's a lot of controversy. I did a little bit of research before presenting this topic. And uh, there will be companies that will tell you that this stuff doesn't affect you, that it's not absorbed into your skin and into your body or into your liver. Then there's others that will say, yes, there is the potential for this to be absorbed into your skin and into your body. And I guess overall, I'm a pretty logical person. Yes, absolutely. I believe in science because I went to school for 2 years to study nutrition. So if I didn't believe in science, I wouldn't have gone to school. What would have been the point, right? But I wanted to learn the science of the body and how the body works and the things that can affect our body. And diseases, how do they affect, diseases and conditions? How do they affect the body? How do they affect our health? How do the foods that we eat, what benefit does that give to the body? All that kind of stuff. So I went to school for 2 years to learn all of that stuff. So yes, I absolutely do believe in science. But I also believe that there is a lot of marketing that is put out in a certain way to make us believe that these things are okay for us or that we should be using these products, for various reasons, to smell nice, to make our home smell nice, to make our home feel cleaner because you can smell that cleanliness in the product that you're using. And I used to use all of these products. For many years, I started changing some products um, just because of where I was living, not particularly for health reasons, until my health got really, really bad, until I was in pain 24/7, and then I didn't know what was affecting my body, so I started changing everything. So anyway, I digress. So let me talk about these things and give you more context around this and why I'm talking about this and why I believe that there is a connection to our hormones and our overall menopause symptoms. So and I had to write this down because I knew I wouldn't remember all of the words, but there's certain products or no, certain ingredients in products that have been recommended for some time to avoid. Some brands have removed some of these ingredients, and some brands still include them. And some of them aren't good for the environment. And my belief is if they aren't good for the environment, why would they be good for us as humans? Why would we want to use them if they're not good for the environment? So to me, that's a two-way street. I think I've shared before, one of my slogans is healthy woman, healthy planet. I believe that those coexist, that if the woman's healthy, the planet's healthy. If that planet is healthy, the woman is healthy. And if women are healthy, everybody's healthy. So some of the ingredients to be on the watch for: parabens, sulfates, um, phthalates, and synthetic fragrances. So those are things to watch out for. And sort of the premise that I go by when I'm looking at products, and when I talk about sulfates, one of the most important ones to watch out for is sodium lauryl sulfate. That's typically used, you'll see it a lot in things that bubble up. So if they put that in, that's what gives us the bubbles in our dish soap and our detergent and those types of things. Things that bubble less generally don't have a sodium lauryl sulfate in them. So anyway, I just want to carry on, but I wanted to stop because I really wanted to mention that. Um, so when we're looking at products, I believe that the less items on any ingredient list, whether it be a food, a product that we're using in our home, on our body, the less ingredients on the list, the better. And you do want to watch for, even if the list is long, but if you're reading and, the ingredient is coming from some type of an herb or a flower or an oil, those things are okay. I wouldn't have any issue around those. But when I start to see things that are, more around, again, I wrote down the sort of the endings, like things that are methylated, like parabens are usually methylated, or they're like a propyl, propyl, or a butyl, those types of things. Those kinds of things, I do take a look at the list, and then I research. I will do a quick Google check and see if, what does it say about this product? One of the websites that I use when it comes to products is ewg.org, or the environmentalworkgroup.org. They've got uh, various things that they check, hair products, skincare products, makeup, cleaners in the home, all those types of things. So they give you a fairly good idea. They rate all of the products, but they will also give you information on the ingredients. Or you can just generally search on Google as well too, but giving you an idea, is this something that is, cancer causing, or is this something that harms the environment? And as I just mentioned, if it harms the environment, I don't want it on my body either. So those are the things to look out for. Now, yes, what we put on our body, so makeups and lotions, and of course, now we know there used to be lead in lipstick and in eyeshadows and all those types of things. So a lot of makeup brands have, I don't know if they've been forced, but they have cleaned up their act. One of the issues is that when companies are manufacturing, so there's basically hundreds, if not thousands, of chemicals that are being produced every day. And there's no way that any one regulatory group could keep up with all of the different chemicals that are being invented or created. So, what they do is they leave it up to the manufacturer that is creating it or using it, and it's called generally recognized as safe. GRS, generally recognized as safe, or that they follow good manufacturing practices. Well, I guess I have an issue with that, because if you're leaving it up to a company who is going to be making money on this product, can we trust that every company is going to do the right thing and produce products that won't affect our health or won't affect the environment? Or they might say, oh, but it's just such a small amount of the overall product, how much is it really going to affect anything? So those are things that concern me. For example, in Europe, there's over 1,000 different ingredients that are not allowed to be put in, especially in skincare products. And in Canada, I believe it's somewhere around 100. And in the US, it's far less than that. I've actually heard somewhere around about a dozen products, or a dozen chemical ingredients are banned. Other than that, companies are allowed to use whatever they want. So, can we rely that every European product is a good product? I'd say they're probably safer, but that's where I also look for smaller homegrown brands, local brands, people who are passionate about their health and creating products that are good for our skin, are good cleaners for in our homes, those types of things. There's another company called, and it's just skipped my mind, um, the Detox Market. The Detox Market, they're both in Canada and the US. It's a website, and they have certain rules around products that they carry, that they exclude a number of products based on certain ingredients. And it would be most definitely the ones that I read off at the beginning. Those ingredients wouldn't be allowed in any of the products that they sell, and they may have a list of others that they don't allow as well too. So I look for places like that, places that are doing the research on the companies that they're selling, or as I say, smaller homegrown brands. And hey, when you're supporting a smaller homegrown brand, you're supporting a local business. And I feel, as a business owner, I feel that's really important. I support people locally, and so I appreciate when people support me as well too, right? So there's all of those things to keep in mind. I mean, the Proctors and Gambles of the world, and all of the huge companies, are they really going to care if somebody stops using their products because they've got millions and millions of users all over the world? I guess they would really care if everybody stopped and said, no, we're not going to use these kinds of products anymore because we just don't believe that they're healthy for us. I want to share an interesting story, though. I had a guest come to visit in October, and this is a person who uses a fabric softener, very lightly scented, but still it's a fabric softener for their laundry. And I can smell a fragrance like that immediately. I can just, I just know it's not a natural fragrance the moment I smell it. And okay, didn't think anything about it. I, washed the bed sheets and everything. And I was surprised that the smell of the fabric softener from this person's pajamas didn't come out of the sheets. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. So I washed them again, and this time used, I think I used a bit of vinegar to see if that would take the smell out. Was still there faintly. And I thought, wow, okay, that's just a fabric softener of a person sleeping in the bed, and not even the sheets not even being washed in that. And then I noticed on the couch that I could smell the fabric softener there. So that really got me thinking, if a clothing item that is just a person sitting somewhere or sleeping somewhere, and that clothing item is coming in contact with another item, and that fragrance is permeating into that fabric, what is in this fabric softener that is causing that scent to last for so long? I don't know the exact science around it. I believe that it involves some plastics or something like that. But it really got me thinking, if that's sitting on a fabric like that, what is it doing to our skin? If it's permeating into the fabric and it can't be washed off that easily, what is it actually doing to our skin? And of course, our skin absorbs, but we also breathe this in. Our lungs are taking this in, and they're having to filter this. And, you know, we banned smoking because of secondhand smoke and all of the issues that it was causing. But sometimes I wonder about the fragrances, especially artificial fragrances. Are they also causing issues for people with lung health? So these are things that I think of, and of course, when I think about how long something is lasting, and as I say, just not even being washed in a fabric softener, but just purely being in contact with another clothing item that was washed in that fabric softener, then how long are these things staying in our body? What is our body having to do to process these scents when, when we're breathing them in on a regular basis? Now, I used to be a person that loved the smell of Mr. Clean. I loved coming home after I'd cleaned the house and everything, and then you'd go out and run a few errands and come home and you can smell that beautiful clean Mr. Clean smell. And I used to love that. And that got me thinking as well too. Wow, this scent is so strong. It lasts for so long. what is in there to make it last so long? And is this healthy for us? Is this healthy for us to breathe in? So those are all things to think of. A lot of the perfumes these days, I mean, years and years ago, perfumes used to be made of actual scents, flowers and herbs that were crushed, or spices that were crushed to get the oils out of them to be able to create scents and mix them together. And now, I mean, a good chemist that can recreate scents is worth their weight in gold, much like the perfumers. I think that's what they're called, perfumers, who used to be able to, who would put scents together from like original, actual natural scents. And so again, a lot of the perfumes these days are basically, they're just a chemical concoction of products that are put together to make a scent. Very few perfumes have actual natural fragrances anymore. And again, that's another thing that, you're spraying these all over your body, you're breathing them in. And I walk down the street sometimes and I, walk past somebody and I can, still smell them like a half a block away as far as where they've come from. And that to me is like the stuff is just sitting in the air. Like if you're leaving this scent behind you, how good is this for the person who's wearing that, who's breathing this in? Now, there is a lot of information around how men's hormones are changing, that they're finding men are having higher estrogen levels, which of course is causing some issues, some fertility issues. And, when we look again at things like colognes, most definitely, men probably aren't as apt to put body lotions on. Some men are, but a lot of it can come from hair products, right? Shampoo, conditioner, the styling products that they put in their hair. And so they're seeing that these are actually producing what's called xenoestrogens, the fake estrogens. And this is, of course, ending up being systemic within the body, which, of course, can cause a hormonal imbalance. The same thing can happen with women, that we can get that hormonal imbalance from the xenoestrogens, and those xenoestrogens are coming from the chemical products that we're using in our homes, on our bodies, things that we're breathing in. They're also, unfortunately, in some of our foods as well, too. When we talk about foods and you look at a label and you see natural flavors, unfortunately, natural flavors don't necessarily mean they're absolutely natural. They could have a natural component of them. They've maybe taken a component out of a natural product to get that flavor, but it isn't, after that, it's a chemical production. It's not actually natural. So these are the things that we need to be aware of. And that's why in a lot of cases, okay, if at the end of the day that was all I could use, because in that moment I had access to nothing else, would I use it? Yes, I would, if I need to wash my hands or whatever. Or if, eating something and I was starving and there was no other food and it was a package and it had natural flavors on it, of course I would have it. But that's where I make the decision day to day of the things that I do eat and the things that I buy. And I make a lot of my foods because that way I know exactly what's going into them. So, where do we start? How do we make this change? I don't recommend, panicking and changing everything all at once. When a product becomes empty, your shampoo runs out, go out and research and find maybe a new shampoo that off of ewg.org. There's other ones. I think there's another one. I don't know the names of all of them because there's so many, but just, search. There's apps to, I think another one's called Think Dirty. I know there's another one out there. It might be Yuka. So look for apps like that. And you can scan barcodes or you can put in the name and it'll give you a rating as to how good that product is. So start doing things like that, of making little changes. The other thing that that you can do is um, just look for alternatives. Some people get into making their own products. I made a lot of my own skincare products for a long time when I was so sick because I wanted to know exactly what was going into them. And so I started making my own body lotions and, um, facial cleansers, those types of things. Makeup, I didn't. I found a really good product that I like that was had ingredients that I was very comfortable with. So there were certain things that I wasn't willing to make. But yeah, making my own body products, it was actually kind of fun. Actually, I enjoyed making it, and I still make my own body scrub and my own lip balm. What else do I make? I do make some nice, lovely scents from essential oils. And that's the other thing, essential oils have become very popular, and people for a while, everybody had diffusers going all the time and stuff like that. That's something else that you want to be careful about. You don't want to have those things going on all day long because they're spreading those scents into the air. Your body and your liver and is having to detox all of that. So it's going through your liver, your kidneys are going to be involved in the process as well. So these are things that keep your space as natural as possible. A lot of people have started getting air purifiers, especially since the pandemic. But a lot of people have air purifiers in their home because of wildfires, those types of things. So everybody's becoming more conscious of this, most definitely. But I think that sometimes we do forget about those things we put on our body or the things that we clean our homes with or our laundry with. Laundry is a big one, right? Your clothes are they're right on your body all day long. And then, at night, whether you're wearing pajamas or not, but you're still on some type of a cloth, you're on your sheets. So those things, our bodies are wrapped up in those. And I just think it's best to, have things that are really fresh and non-toxic next to our bodies and that we're going to be breathing in. Something else that I think is really important as well is things like deodorant. I switched many, many years ago from using deodorant, and you're probably thinking, oh Lord, does she smell? No, I don't. I actually use fresh squeezed lemon juice on my underarms. That's what I use as my deodorant. I've been using it for many, many years. I don't have any issues with odor whatsoever. Uh, and part of that comes in the way that I eat as well too, and keeping my body active and drinking enough water, eating a lot of green vegetables. All of those things help to deodorize my body and keep my body fresh. So I don't have to wear deodorant. My lemon juice does a great job. But there's lots of natural deodorants out there that are that are very clean. One of the things that has become very concerning is the aluminum in the deodorant. So, looking for products that are far more natural that don't contain the aluminum in them. I'm just looking at my list because I want to make sure that I don't miss anything out. Um, when we think about, so sometimes people get skin rashes and, a lot of times they may not associate it to their clothes. They might associate it more to maybe a material, but not thinking about the cleansers that were used to clean the clothes. And so that's where skin rashes could develop. But if we think about everything that's happening, not just the material itself, but how it's cleaned, how it's dried, if we're using a fabric sheet or even a fabric um, liquid, then uh, fabric softener liquid, I meant, then those things could be part of the culprit as to what's happening. Sometimes if we, are getting headaches on a regular basis, have you incorporated something into your home that is maybe more scented than what you're used to? So there's all sorts of ways that we can be affected by these products. I know for me, and I sometimes say that maybe I've done the wrong thing because I do not use any scents in my home other than on occasion I will use essential oils in certain things. And so my home is completely fragrance free. When I go out or go to somebody's place or I'm around somebody who's wearing a lot of perfume, it is really hard for me. It actually kind of closes up my throat. I have a very hard time breathing. So my friends know not to wear a lot of perfume around me, or colognes. But again, I feel that these things are really important for our overall health because the moment we go outside, we are exposed to a lot of chemicals. So, can these affect menopause? Can they affect your hormones directly? There is science around it that yes, they can. As far as how much it is affected, some will say that it's, a small amount. But I always look at it this way: by the time a woman reaches midlife, reaches sort of that 40, 45 age range, your body has been through a lot. Your body has had a lot of exposure at this point, and your liver might need some extra support. It's been doing a lot of work. And so that's where I think that if we're a little more mindful of what we're using and making sure that, we're not adding extra stress into our liver, I think that all of these things can help to support our transition through the various stages of menopause and beyond. I mean, even now that I'm, post-menopause almost 15 years, doesn't mean that I'm going to go out and start using all of these chemicals again. No way. I like the way that I feel and I like the way that my home smells, and I believe that overall it is beneficial for my body. And as I say, I also believe that the things that I'm doing is very beneficial for my health or for the health of the planet as well too. And I always want to support the planet as much as I can. So uh, you know, I think it's all around education, most definitely. But I always look at it this way: if you're experiencing really severe menopause symptoms and certain things haven't worked or you haven't gotten a lot of relief, what have you got to lose to making additional changes? Yeah, sometimes, I'm like anybody else. I have certain products that I love and I get into habits, and that's the product I want. And if it's out of stock, I'll wait till it comes back into stock. So I'm like that as well too. And making the changes that I made, I mean, I loved wearing perfume and I had some beautiful perfumes. And I just thought, oh, you know, how am I going to smell now that I don't have perfume? And it's so funny because I've had people actually compliment me on my scent, and I'm not wearing anything other than natural me. I use natural oils on my body, but there's probably some scent that comes from those. But it actually kind of makes me chuckle a little bit. But I I guess that's the way I look at it. What have you got to lose? If your menopause symptoms are really debilitating and you've done other things, then there's underlying issues. There's other areas of your body that need support. It's not just going to be the hormone therapy that's going to fix this. There's deeper support that your body needs. Is it going to change overnight? Not necessarily. It might take a little while for your body to get sort of cleansed of things that it could be holding on to. Right? We know they're talking about microplastics and all these types of things, and how our bodies could be contaminated with them. Um, you know. It's been talked about again more recently, but a few years ago, there was this big thing about, a simple tea bag, the tea bag that's not paper, all of the chemicals that are released when you use one of those, sort of fabric type tea bags. And I noticed just recently that it's started to come up again. There's an influencer out there that has started talking about, how many toxins are released in a single tea bag. But we're hearing this more and more. So if those things can affect our health. And when we think about how these chemicals are produced that go into these products, then it only makes sense that these are also are affecting our health. But of course, companies make a ton of money off of them, right? Especially on women's beauty products, lotions, perfumes, all those types of things. They're going to lead you to believe that these are absolutely healthy. And again, they're generally recognized as safe, and they leave it up to the company to make that decision. Well, if they're making a ton of money off of you, then maybe they're not the best ones to be making those decisions. The other part is as well too is, wording that's used, that's around the whole greenwashing and, health washing, those types of things. But there is a lot of, I look at some of the marketing, and they really, really kind of, aim in on women to get to certain points, um, around fragrance and around scent and those types of things, or having a clean home and free of bacteria. Well, we need all of those things. We need bacteria. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox now. You can tell that I am very passionate about this, but again, it's all about when I have a client that's really struggling, and and they're struggling to figure out why their menopause symptoms you know, are being so difficult, or why things really aren't changing, then that's when I have to dig really deep with those clients and find out, okay, what are you willing to change this? Are you willing to look at these certain things? And the only reason I guess that I do that is because I know how far I had to dig deep to figure out why I was so sick and why my menopause symptoms were so bad. So, sometimes we do have to go really deep and look at everything. And based on the way that I feel now, as far as I'm concerned, it's worth it. But maybe it's not worth it to everybody. I don't know. But it was for me. And as I say, based on the way that I feel now, it was worth figuring out what I could change, what products I could use that I liked, and I'm the better for it as far as I'm concerned in the long run. So another thing that I have done is I've created a guide. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more, or having a little more detail around the things that I've talked about in the session today, I do have a link down in the description where you can download the guide. And little disclaimer, yes, I'm collecting your email address, so you'll become part of my newsletter, which of course lets you know about my weekly lives and the topic that I'll be talking about. I send those out every Tuesday. I do a follow-up email on Thursday, but the guide has some really good information in it. It's got some of the links that I talked about, and yeah, I think that you'll find it quite beneficial. So that was my topic for today, about what can actually disrupt our hormones, the things that we don't think about. And it's often that we don't think about some of these everyday products. Try to control as much as you can. I guess that would be my recommendation. We can't control everything around us. We can't control when we go to somebody's house or our office space that we work in, but you can control your own environment in your home. And that's where I'd recommend do that as much as possible, and give it some time. You might not feel changes right away, but over time, you should start to see a difference. Thank you very much for joining. If you've got questions, you can post them down below, or you can message me directly. As I say, the guide is in the description. There's a link to download the guide. And I'll just quickly put up my banner here, that if you are struggling and nobody's been able to give you answers, or you're just at that point where you're saying, I just don't feel like myself. I feel like I'm on the edge of losing it, or on the edge of everything breaking down. I don't know how I can continue to hold all of this together. please reach out. 30 minutes of your time for you and I to have a discussion around how you're feeling, some of the things that you've done, and where you want to be. I'm happy to have that discussion with you to see if I can help you, to see if there is a solution to the way that you're feeling. And I'm very confident because I worked with a lot of women who have lost hope or who have really struggled to figure out why they're still feeling the way that they feel. And with all the changes we end up making, they start to feel better or their symptoms go away. So it's something that I feel I am really good at. Actually, I don't feel that. I know I'm really good at it. So I'd encourage you to reach out because I'd love to have a conversation with you. No woman has to suffer through menopause. There are solutions. Thank you for joining. Have a great day, and I'll see you again next week.